off this countdown, we have St. Elmo. St. Elmo, originally known as Forest City, was once a very popular mining town in Colorado. They had about 2,000 people living there when the mines opened. However, in the early 1920s, the mining industry started to decline, and slowly people packed up and left. However, it's not completely abandoned. Apparently, a couple of people still live there, but it's said that this place is haunted. In fact, it's said that it is home to some of the most paranormal activity in the state. Maybe it's a good spot for paranormal investigators, but not the best area to live in. I mean, I wouldn't want ghosts for neighbors. I mean, maybe I would, if they were friendly ghosts that kept noise levels down, then sure.
Coming in at number 9 is The Fairy. I wanted to go with either The Fairy or Tinkerbell, but anyway, in 2006, a strange laboratory was discovered underneath an abandoned orphanage in London. But what blew everyone's mind was that there were the remains of hundreds of creatures down there, many of which are mythological. The collection had supposedly belonged to Thomas Theodore Merlin, an 18th century cryptozoologist who spent his whole life finding the remains of unusual creatures. The collection can now be found in the Maryland Cryptid Museum, and it contains taxidermied dragons, artifacts from ancient vampire nations, and the infant forms of werewolves. The skeletal picture that came up when I found this story did look like a tiny fairy, but yeah, skeptical as always, and the wings probably belong to a moth of some kind if I'm honest. Some people think the specimens are just works of art that the artist created himself, others say the museum isn't even open to the public. So there is a lot of controversy surrounding this one, but the fact this lab was found in the basement of an abandoned orphanage just gives me the creeps. At number 8, we have the 6th floor. This one happened at the start of 2017 near Pumpwell, India. A group of builders showed up to an abandoned building that was left mid-construction. When they reached the 6th floor of the building, they discovered the corpses of 2 men in their 30s just there. How insane. Imagine you go into work that day none the wiser and then find not 1 but 2 dead bodies. Obviously, they immediately called the police, and they found out that the 2 had been murdered a few days prior and had been left to rot in the building. The placement of the bodies was very interesting. They almost seemed like they had been petrified, like in Harry Potter. That's actually not a joke. Like their hands and legs looked very out of place, like they were in the middle of something and then froze and then got killed. It's a very strange case for sure. Filling our number 7 slot is Happy Birthday Eric. This story is from Reddit user Never Enough Muppets, who said he had visited an abandoned mansion near his house in Long Island back in 2009. The house seemed to have been furnished in the 60s or 70s, and in one room he found a huge pile of mail dating back to 1995, which is presumably when the house became abandoned. Fair enough, nothing that bad thus far. He entered another room and found a lot of children's toys, except they weren't old, dusty, or broken. They seemed quite new, like they had just been recently bought. Still, he wasn't super suspicious, and he forged on to the kitchen. There he found some empty bean cans which looked like they had literally just been eaten, so now he was getting a bit weirded out. He went to the 2nd floor, and the floor was so badly damaged he had to be careful where he stood, otherwise he could have just easily fallen through. Inside one bedroom he found hundreds, and I mean hundreds of birthday cards, all addressed to someone called Eric, and all seemingly written by the same person. Wow, someone must really like you, Eric. Unbroken still, the user went up to the 3rd floor and heard some noise from a nearby bedroom. He heard a slap and then a dragging sound, and then a very filthy pair of hands appeared from out of the doorway of a bedroom. A man was dragging himself out of the room and groaning while he did it, and you can bet your ass that was the final straw for the user. He ran out of the house and never looked back. Now at number 6 is the petting zoo. In this one, a group of explorers decided to go into an old abandoned petting zoo just for fun, as you do when you're bored. They went through barn after barn, but they found something odd in one of them. One of the barns was chock full of dolls, and not just normal dolls, I'm talking naked dolls. Already I have way too many questions. Why did a petting zoo need a bunch of dolls, naked or otherwise? They have no business being in a petting zoo, so it just makes no sense to me, unless someone stored them in there after it had been abandoned, which is a possible explanation. Either way, finding little naked female dolls all over the floor is just not really my cup of tea. Next. Coming in at number 5 is the Pentagram. The West Park Hospital was built back in 1923 as a psychiatric facility in Surrey, England. It was one of 5 hospitals in the area known as Epsom Cluster. By 2003, it had become run down and most of the buildings were closed and the site was completely abandoned. By 2010, most were even demolished save a few, and before it was finally destroyed, it was a very popular place for urban explorers. An urban explorer decided to take a look and entered a very old decaying room and found all the facility's fire extinguishers were in this room arranged in the shape of a huge pentagram. Yeah, you heard that right. Now I mean, there are 2 possibilities: either some kids were just trying to play a prank and decided to do this, or it was the site of a sinister satanic ritual. What do you guys think? At number 4 is the mummified body. Back in 2014, in the small town of Gilbert, police started getting reports about an abandoned house that seemed to be standing on its last legs. Understandably, the police decided to go check out the house, and when they arrived, they realized it wasn't abandoned, it was just neglected. To make matters worse, they found the body of a dead 90-year-old woman completely mummified in her bed, still clutching onto a blanket. Her body had been decaying for more than 4 bloody years. I can't even imagine what the house would have smelt like by then. But that's not even the last twist to this story. The house wasn't empty. The woman's 60-year-old daughter Janet was still living in the house with the body. She found her mother dead in her bed in 2010 but started panicking and worried that the police would think Janet killed her based on the condition of their house. Their house, by the way, was a hoarder house, so I'm surprised they even found the body amongst all the other things. Janet thought she'd get arrested for senior neglect, so she decided not to call the police and just left her mother in her bed, and that's where she'd been since. Filling our number 3 slot is the house. YouTuber Alien6467 posted a video in 2013 of them exploring an abandoned house they had randomly found in New York. They show the inside of the house seemingly empty, but there's graffiti and weird words and letters on the walls in a few of the rooms. One room had the word vengeance very largely written on the wall, which is not even the worst find. The walls in some of the rooms are filled with Ziploc bags stuck to the wall, and every single one has 1 coin inside of it, and some are filled with water and a coin, and they even found bags of singular coins hidden in the floor. These are just so many weird things all in one house, and I just don't understand it. Apparently, if you do that with water and a coin, it wards off flies or birds, but no one was even living there. When the group finally left the house, the camera focuses on the house, and in one of the upstairs windows, someone was moving. On closer inspection, it seemed to be a figure wearing a black robe just staring at them. That person was inside the house when they were in there, just quietly listening to them and then what they were doing. I mean, what is happening? I can't make sense of this one. Now at number 2 is the blood trail. Redditor Pocoti said he was once part of a group that gave tours of an abandoned missile silo in Colorado. One day he was taking a group into one of the main rooms and through a broken hatch door. But very quickly he realized something was wrong. There was a pool of blood on the door, and it wasn't dried, it was fresh. Like someone had just broken this hatch very recently and started bleeding because of it. The blood formed a trail, and the group decided to follow it because on a tour you follow the trail of blood instead of ending the tour altogether. The trail led deeper and deeper into the complex, and it led the group into one of the silos. The blood stopped at a railed ledge looking over a 50-foot drop. Blood was all over the ledge and platform, so it was clear that whoever or whatever was bleeding had jumped. The group thought they were after an injured human, but they never ended up finding out what it was. How does anything, especially someone or something already bleeding, survive a 50-foot drop? Unless it was a massive bird and it flew, the thing went straight down to its death and then straight up to heaven. And finally at number 1 is The Thing. Back in 2008, 2 friends entered an abandoned house whilst recording the whole thing. They figured it would be some fun, and there were rumors going around that the house was also haunted, so that's the cherry on top. So they decide to go through the front door with their flashlights, and as soon as they go inside, they see a thing at the end of the room. The creature was definitely human, but it was running on all 4s, and it seemed like it had literally been waiting for them to come. The creature starts running towards the boys while making a really weird pig-like sound, and the boys run for their lives. I don't know if the video was fake or not. All I know is that if that was me, I would have tried to see if it was just a deranged person or something else entirely. I mean, who am I kidding? I probably probably would just run for my life.
Starting off this countdown, we have the extinct bat. In 2019, the Hill's horseshoe bat species were spotted for the first time in 40 years. The bats are home to a Rwandan rainforest. Scientists figured that they were endangered and had gone extinct already, since they hadn't seen them in years. That was until 2019 when scientists were on a 10-day expedition, and they came across these little guys. But when they first captured the bat, they didn't know how great their discovery was going to be. One scientist said, and I quote, "We knew immediately that the bat we had captured was unusual and remarkable. The facial features were exaggerated to the point of being comical. It took them 3 years to then identify what species this bat belonged to. Once they did, that's when they realized that this bat was brought back to life." Moving on at number 9, we have Krakow, Italy. Krakow, Italy was founded in the 8th century. However, it now lays abandoned due to a series of destructive natural disasters. The first natural disaster occurred in 1963 when a bunch of landslides affected the area. This was a result of the city being built on a cliff 1,300 feet off of the ground, and they also had some sewer and water system issues. Then in 1972, a flood struck the area and made the whole situation worse. Then in 1980, there was an earthquake that left the city completely abandoned. Now, the only people you may catch there are film crews. It's a very popular filming location. Some scenes in the film Quantum of Solace were shot there. But the area itself is considered a ticking time bomb, and it's surrounded by a locked gate. Making our way down the list at number 8, we have the city underwater. You aren't going to be able to visit this next city unless you have access to scuba diving gear, because this city is now completely submerged underwater. Built 1,300 years ago, the city I'm referring to is Shai-Chang, also referred to as Lion City, and it's located in eastern China. In 1959, the city was purposely flooded to build a hydroelectric power station. Now it's referred to as China's Atlantis. What's pretty fascinating is that although it lays about 40 meters underwater, the buildings are still in pretty good shape. The only change is instead of having human residents, it's home to tons of aquatic life. Moving on to number 7, we have Cahaba, Alabama. Cahaba in Alabama was abandoned after suffering from seasonal flooding. In 1865, Cahaba was destroyed by a flood and then abandoned. After the flood, living there became relatively impossible, so residents had no choice but to leave. But then in the 1920s, an archaeologist started to uncover and preserve some of the structures. Now it's said that the area is very haunted. In fact, it's known for a ghostly orb that can be seen floating around only to vanish into thin air. So the citizens may no longer live there, but ghosts certainly do. In our 6th spot, we have Varosha, Cyprus. In the early 70s, Varosha was one of the most popular tourist attractions in the world. That was until 1974 when Turkey invaded Cyprus. As a result, the residents there fled for their lives. Some residents have told stories of pots being left on their stoves or things still left in their ovens. It's quite sad how they were forced out of their own home and not allowed to return. Since 1974, Varosha has been abandoned and under control of the Turkish military. The whole area is now fenced off and under constant supervision. If you try to break in, well, the army patrols have orders to shoot on sight. So don't even try to visit the city, it definitely will end badly. It's just such a shame because the area is beautiful. In fact, actress Elizabeth Taylor loved going there. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Plymouth, Montserrat. Plymouth, once the capital of Montserrat in the Caribbean, is often referred to as Pompeii of the Caribbean. Why? Well, in 1996, a volcano erupted, causing a mass evacuation. A few months later, some residents returned, but were welcomed with another eruption. On June 25th, 1997, this eruption killed 19 residents and destroyed the island's airport, trapping many others from fleeing. Eventually, Plymouth was evacuated again, but this time, no one dared to return. Everything was destroyed. In fact, 80% of the town is currently covered in ash. Pictures show homes completely buried with only their roofs sticking out. It's quite sad and scary. Moving on to number 4, we have Centralia. Centralia is an abandoned town located in Pennsylvania. It was once a populated town, however, a lot of residents were forced to leave due to unsafe living conditions. This all started after a coal fire ignited underground. This fire has been burning for almost 50 years, and it's predicted to continue on for another 200 years. As a result of this fire, tons of sinkholes have formed, hot smoke is released underground, and carbon monoxide has filled some residents' basements. In some parts of the town, it's said that the ground beneath them have reached up to 900 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 400 degrees Celsius for us Canadians. Now, the US government is trying to erase any history of this city. They took away any signs directing people to this town, removed the town's zip code, and forced most of the residents out, except for 7 residents that are happy living in their deadly town and refuse to move out. In our third spot, we have the Island of Dolls, aka the island I never want to visit. Located in Mexico City, the Island of Dolls is full of dolls hanging from trees and buildings. If that's not bad enough, these dolls have been there for so long that they are covered in dirt, cobwebs, and insects, making them look that much more terrifying. Now, you're probably wondering how this place came to be. Clearly, it's not Annabelle or Chucky's private island resort, though it could be. So back in the 1950s, a man named Don Julian started to hang dolls from trees as a way to protect himself against evil spirits. Paranormal things kept happening to him there, so he would hang dolls everywhere with the idea that they would scare the souls of the deceased. He spent more than 50 years hanging dolls. Some were found in the garbage, some were missing limbs. Did not matter. If it was a doll, it got hung up all around the island. Now it's abandoned and looks like something straight out of a horror movie. Coming in at number 2, we have Wittenoom, Australia. Located north-northeast of Perth, Australia, Wittenoom is considered one of Australia's deadliest towns. And you would think it would have to do with Australia's massive and deadly insects, but surprisingly not. In fact, it's because of its blue asbestos. In 1937, blue asbestos was discovered in the city's gorge. Years later, miners were unearthing tons of asbestos from the ground. It wasn't until 1978 that the government started pushing people out of their homes. They realized how deadly it was for them to be living there. It was increasing their risk for cancer. And in some cases, people were already developing lung cancer just from living there. It would cost the town about $2.43 million to rid the town of asbestos. So instead of doing that, they just shut the town down completely. In 2006, the government turned off the power to the town and had its name removed from maps and road signs. In fact, all roads that once led to the town are now closed off. If you do choose to enter the town, you will find tons of huge warning signs advising you to turn back. And in our number 1 spot, we have Pripyat, Ukraine. This is probably the most famous abandoned city on the list. So Pripyat was a city in Ukraine that had a population of 49,000 individuals. However, on April 27, 1986, all residents were forced to evacuate following the Chernobyl disaster. Pripyat was the most affected by the Chernobyl nuclear disaster since they were the closest to the power plant. They were the ones most exposed to the radioactive chemicals. A once beautiful city was left abandoned in just 3 hours. Due to the radiation, the city will be left untouched for thousands of more years until it's safe enough to return.
Starting us off with number 10 is the bathtub. See, now I wouldn't be scared if I just happened upon a bathtub, but sadly the bathtub wasn't empty, and sadly what was inside made me gag at least 3 times. Around a decade ago, a picture circulated on the internet and caused a lot of controversy because the origin of the picture was never properly disclosed by whoever posted it. But this person found an old rusty bathtub full of brains, real human brains, preserved in a sort of yellowy liquid. The brains were definitely preserved because they were grey and firm, and some were also cut in half. It's said the place where it was found used to be an old hospital or something linked to a medical setting. The tub honestly contained probably 50 brains. I counted around 31, and those are just the ones I could see on the surface, not even the ones below. They were probably left there as a super poor storage solution, and they most likely gave whoever found them a bloody heart attack. back.
In our 9th spot, we have Catagonus wagneri. Back in the day, this animal was discovered from early fossil records. They were thought to be extinct and people only knew about them because of the fossils. That was until 1974. That's when a biology professor from University of Connecticut rediscovered them while on a research expedition. In fact, the species was well known to the native people there. However, they are badly endangered. A huge population of them live in a 2,400-acre area in Gran Chaco. They hide out in the bushy, thorny areas so that they're safe from predators and local hunters. Sadly, only approximately 3,000 remain in the world. Moving on to number 8, we have tarsier. Now these guys are undeniably cute. Just look at its eyes, like they're so cute and big for its tiny little body. But strangely enough, scientists still don't know much about them. One of the reasons being is that scientists thought that they went extinct in the 1920s. But in May of the early 2000s, while checking a rat trap that they had set in the forest, scientists discovered that they had actually caught a pygmy tarsier. Sadly, it had died in the trap. But that's what let them know that they were still alive, minus that one. Then in 2008, researchers found a family of them in Lore Lindu National Park. Nowadays, it's believed that there are only 5,000 to 10,000 of these animals in the whole world. And that number is sadly falling again instead of rising. Now this is because these little creatures don't live too long in captivity. In fact, when they are in distress, they apparently try to take their own lives. So that's a reason why it's hard to look after these little guys and keep them off the endangered list. In our 7th spot today, we have the goblin shark. Now if you all have been a fan of this channel for a while, then you guys know that I hate this guy. Like, I'm not scared of sharks, but this guy, like, he's terrifying. He doesn't even look like a shark. He looks like a mutated shark, like a shark that scientists tried to cross with a human or something. Anyways, goblin sharks were believed to have gone extinct millions of years ago. That was until 1891 when researchers spotted it off the coast of Japan. Instantly they were confused, but also scared, because again, look at this thing. What they found the weirdest though is that this shark barely changed over time. They didn't evolve at all. They still look the exact same, hence why they are called a living fossil. So these creatures can grow 12 feet long and can weigh up to 460 pounds. But in 2000, they found a giant goblin shark that was 20 feet long. So now researchers say that they have no real idea about how big they can truly get. Now the scariest part about them is that they have these weird ligaments in their jaw, and that allows them to extend their mouths out and snatch up their prey. Plus, their mouths launch out pretty fast. That's also why it makes their mouth look so creepy, you know? In our 6th spot, we have the tequila fish. And it's a very interesting name for a fish. I hope their relatives are called the vodka fish. So these fish disappeared from the Mexican wild in 2003. This was due to pollution and invasive species. People thought there was no hope, that these fish were just gonna die off. But turns out that conservationists were able to bring them back to life after a decades-long operation. Basically, scientists at Michoacana University in Mexico took 5 pairs of these fish in 1998. They then kept the fish safe, studied them, and then they made them reproduce to develop a larger colony. After 4 years in artificial ponds, scientists were able to increase these 5 fish to 10,000. However, only 1,500 were released back into the wild. And apparently the released fish are thriving and reproducing out in the wild. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the coelacanth. You're not gonna believe this, but these fish were around when dinosaurs roamed the earth. In fact, they were believed to have gone extinct alongside the dinosaurs. Then, millions of years later, they were rediscovered. In the 19th century, scientists discovered a fossil of this fish. This fossil was over 410 million years old. They thought they went extinct around 66 million years ago. So it shocked scientists quite a bit when in 1938 they rediscovered them off the coast of South Africa. They're just alive and thriving. In our 4th spot, we have the singing dog. This animal has been named the singing dog due to their distinctive howl. Sometimes they howl together to form kind of like a choir. Apparently their howls sound like a cross between a wolf's howl and a whale's song. They are also called the New Guinea Highland dogs and are closely related to the Australian dingo. Now, wildlife biologists thought that these animals went extinct sometime in the 1970s. However, in 2016, they were rediscovered in a remote region of New Guinea. Tests were run on them and it was confirmed that they were the same breed. In our 3rd spot, we have the tree lobster, which is not an animal, so I'm technically cheating having it on today's list because it's an insect, but who cares, okay? The tree lobster is a large black stick insect. In fact, it is said to be one of the rarest insects on Earth. Back in the day, they were popular for fishing, as they were used for fishing bait. But by the 1920s, they were said to be extinct. Basically, a ship accidentally crashed onto an island and rats aboard the ship got introduced onto the island and threatened these species. But later on, a pair of Australian scientists discovered 24 of these bugs living beneath a single shrub. They ended up taking 2 pairs, breeding them, and then reintroducing more of these insects to help repopulate them. In our second spot today, we have the night parrot. Night parrots are often referred to as one of the world's most mysterious birds. They were first discovered in 1845 and were extremely rare to spot. That's because they come out at night and only in remote areas. Even then, there had not been a single sighting of these birds for 100 years, so they were declared extinct. That was until 1979 when a number of them were spotted again. In fact, this bird is the holy grail for bird watchers. Some spend decades hoping to get a glimpse of this bird up close. And in our number 1 spot today, we had the Kashmir musk deer. But I like to call them the vampire deer because they have vampire fangs. So these deer are native to Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, and western Nepal. It was believed that they went extinct in 1948 until they were rediscovered in 2009. However, they are badly endangered. It's said that there are less than 5,000 musk deer throughout the world. The main reason being is because they are a very popular target for hunters. Hunters like to kill them for their musk glands, which are often used in perfumes. They are said to be a rare aphrodisiac and can sell for around $45,000 per kilogram. Now, it is illegal to hunt for them, but that still doesn't stop people.